Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Dr. Glas by Hjalmar Söderberg. This is a Swedish classic published in 1905 and was then later translated in 1963 into English. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really fascinating, brilliantly written. Some of the language in it is utterly divine, and it was just ultimately a very fascinating portrait of a very damaged man. Let's get into the review. So this is a very typical sort of fin de siècle novel in the fact that it deals with the anxieties of the end of the 19th century. It's also an epistolary novel, and this particular one was written in diary form. So we get the inner machinations of the eponymous Dr. Glas over a summer in Stockholm. So, what is the novel about? Well, let's consult the back. Lonely and introspective, Dr. Glas has long felt an instinctive hostility towards the odious local minister. So when the minister's beautiful wife complains of her husband's oppressive sexual attentions, Dr. Glas finds himself contemplating murder. Stark, brooding, and enormously controversial when first published in 1905, this astonishing novel juxtaposes impressions of fin de siècle Stockholm against the psychological landscape of a man besieged by obsession. So naturally you can tell that hooked me straight away. And very much it does what it says on the back. This is a really intriguing portrait of a damaged man. And you can tell there's very much influences of other texts in the time. And he actually does quote some other writers. Like, I believe there's allusions to Ibsen, Dostoevsky. There's also contemporary music and allusions to Wagner and other cultural things. And he even talks about dreams, and he's very self-aware about the psychology of the self. So he's been reading Freud as well, which I think Interpretation of Dreams was published in 1899. So it clearly is playing on his mind. And in a way that's quite fascinating because it shows that Dr. Glas is a very intelligent, well-read and very cultured man. Yet he is sieged by the most base of desires, and that is love. He falls in love with the local minister's wife and feels like he has to intervene and help her, and he battles with himself. Like, some of his diary entries become very fervent because he's almost playing the devil and angel role. So why should I kill this man? Why shouldn't I? And in a way that's almost plays into like Stevenson's duality in Curious Case of Dr. Strange and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Strange? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Fucking hell. Dr. Strange and Mr. Hyde? No. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In places as well, you can see the sort of duality between Dr. Glas and Gregorius as well. So how far does his hatred go with the local minister that isn't actually directed towards himself? He loathes this man, but he also loathes himself. Yeah, like it's all these dualities that sort of make it really fascinating as well. And in terms of language, some of the passages are absolutely beautifully written. Like, for example, this bit on June the 23rd, so it's midsummer. So it says, "Midsummer Eve, light, blue night, from childhood and youth do I not remember you as the lightest, giddiest, airiest of all nights of the year. Why, then, are you now so oppressive, anxious?" ? There are so many points in the novel where it's very introspective and dealing with absolute anguish. And it's fundamentally a portrait of a man so lonely and repressed and sad. Like, he clearly is depressed and feels utterly hopeless with the direction he's taken in life. Like, for example, he's so judgmental to other people, and you think, how is this man a doctor? And all he's done is just followed this path in life, and it's ultimately led to dissatisfaction. And he also criticises himself as being a man who looks on, he doesn't take action. And so then when this whole drama between Gregorius and Gregorius's wife comes into his life, he decides that it's now his moment of action it's his turn to become a hero. It's almost like he's romanticising the moment and vilifying the minister to become the antagonist. He becomes the knight in shining armour, and then Gregorius's wife is the young maiden that he is destined to save. And there's another fascinating passage. I think I understand now. A woman in love has just that magic spell in her walk, her complexion, her whole being, which alone can hold me in thrall. And it was always such women who awakened my desires. But naturally, being in love with other men, they did not see me. Which, I mean, like, a therapist could probably, like, delve into that and sort of completely psychoanalyze just from that passage. There's so many moments in this that are just so rich for psychological analysis. I think that's why I really enjoyed this novel, because he's such a complex, twisted man. Interestingly, this novel feels far more modern than anything I've read in this time period. And I don't know how that is. Maybe it is partially to do with it being a translated piece of fiction, because it was translated in 1963, so that's obviously more modern. And it almost feels like a precursor to James Joyce and the whole modernist movement of stream of consciousness. And that's partially down to the idea of it being a diary. Yeah, so it's quite a deep, dark novel, and maybe that's why I liked it. Because I don't tend to read things that are all rosy and happy. And yeah, don't know what that says about me. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the philosophical debates that the character goes through, his views on morality. At some points, I don't know whether it was just me, but I found him quite witty in a very sort of sarcastic, mean way, and I found myself like laughing occasionally, which I don't know whether that was the intention at all, and maybe that's just me having a weird sense of humour. Yeah, overall I'd probably say this is one of the best books I've read so far this year, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone that likes sort of psychological stories with really complex, dark characters, musings on philosophy, psychology, literature, art, that kind of thing. Then this is definitely worth reading. Like, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. Like, there's a moment where he talks about art and discusses that he feels like any artist is just copying. So it's the idea that nobody perceives the world without an influence. And I think that's just really fascinating. Like, when you look at something, like the other day I saw this photo in the snow, and it reminded me of Peter Bruegel's Hunters in the Snow. And it's just strange how there's like, and also I do that a lot with movies. Like, I feel I get these sort of cinematic reminders of things that I see. And I just thought that was really fascinating that he picked up on that. The fact that what do we actually see and how we see the world is very much shaped by the people that came before us. And I think it's the kind of novel that would work phenomenally well on screen. I think it's already had a couple of adaptations, but I think it's the kind of thing that could be adapted again. So, like, in an ideal world, it would be directed by Bergman, but obviously he no longer is of this plane. And you'd want to leave it in Sweden, in Swedish. So maybe, like, a wild card might be Ruben Östlund, who directed The Square and Tourist, because, I mean, I don't think he's ever done a period drama, so that in itself would be interesting how he would handle it. But it's like the dark humour and the way he portrays characters in his film. They're going through events where they're trying to save face and sort of disguise the turmoil they're going through. And I think he would do that quite well. Another one would be, so these aren't Swedish directors, but Joachim Trier from Norway, I think he could adapt this film really well. And then Anders Thomas Jensen, who is a Danish director. So it would definitely be kept in Scandinavia. But yeah, I think they could do a really good job with this. Yeah, and if it was to be like Hollywoodified and like turned into an English language thing, then, I mean, again, like Bergman, the ideal candidate would be Kubrick, but alas, that wouldn't be possible. But maybe like Paul Thomas Anderson. I've only ever seen The Master with Joaquin Phoenix in it. But yeah, I think he could do a phenomenal job with this as well. And maybe like Joaquin Phoenix would have to play the Doctor. That would be interesting. Like, because he's really great at fucked up characters. Yeah, oh, maybe that would be good. Yes, I'm going to narrow it down and say Ruben Östlund for the Swedish adaptation and Paul Thomas Anderson for the English language adaptation. Someone needs to make this happen. That was my review. A bit chaotic. I've tried to film this all morning and I, for some reason, just can't get my words out today. And there's just been like light fluctuations, noise, dogs scratching and snuffling and moving around. So this might be quite disjointed, but I just wanted to sort of get my thoughts about this book out into the world because I really enjoyed it. It needs to be read by more people. Like, this is a phenomenal piece of fiction. I can't believe that, one, I haven't read it sooner and that it's just not really well known. Like, it could stand up there with some of the most famous modern classics, and it's a shame that it doesn't. But yeah, anyway, this has been me rambling about this amazing book. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.
I don't think I'll ever fall in love with you, babe.